I am thrilled to welcome you
Hello
all
and
to the
welcome.
four-day week discussion, which I'm very glad we're having
Yes,
on a Wednesday instead of a Friday, because then maybe no one would have shown up.
this guy is an organizational psychiatrist with a massive grin on that face of his, a big, bald, shiny head, a couple of grand's worth of suit jacket attached to his back, and he is your perfect example of a Davosian man. Yes, as he said, Adam said that we're looking at the 4-day week, and they've got some talking heads here to do so.
I'm Adam Grant. I'm an organizational psychologist and author, and I've been fascinated by this question of why do we work the amount that we do for a long time? I study work for a living, but I don't think it should necessarily define us. And it was about a century ago that Henry Ford, not exactly known for his enlightened views on management and taking care of humans, reduced the work week from 6 days to 5.
Now he's going to give reasons why they reduced the working week from 6 days to five, but it was because people were working out that 6-day weeks was slavery. You still didn't have much time to spend with your family. You're working 12 to 18-hour shifts every day, so you're a slave, and they need to get you to fight. They need to get you to work. They need to get you willing to die for your country. So they need to give you a couple of days off a week instead of treating you like a slave. So, Henry Ford came along and he was like, I tell you what, I'm a nice guy. I'll stop you from all committing suicide and being sad and dying in the workplace by giving you an extra day off and creating a 5-day week, the new normal.
Because he found that people were more productive, morale went up, there was more loyalty, there was
That was the result of what happened after he committed those actions. That's not the reasons he did it, because he's saying he did it because he found that all of this happened. No, if he did it, if he didn't do it, then he wouldn't have found all of those things happen. So he couldn't have done it, and for those things that he didn't know would happen until after he'd done it. So straight away, these guys, it's 39 seconds in, and they're manipulating what you think and how you feel and what you. So let's listen to this again. Bear that in mind, how he words it.
days to 5. Because he found that people were more productive, morale went up, there was more loyalty, there was lower turnover. And he said it was good for business. And then we could start to wonder, well, why are we now stuck on 5 days? Was that or
So there you go. He says, oh, he discovered all of these things, and so that's why he did it. Yet he didn't discover those things until he did it. So this is a narrative set down by someone who's trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you their idea, and their idea is partially attached to a nice virtue. They're trying to say, okay, 5 days a week is obviously still close to some sort of like modern slavery, literally modern slavery, tech slavery, like the new normal, the new modern is like we should be working less because we've got all these other distractions, we've got all these other things to do anyway. So we need to divide up our time better. Society has fallen apart in many ways, and they need to be able to give us throw some cookies at the children. Would you shut them up? And this is what this guy's here to do with his very shiny head.
ordained from on high? Or is this, in fact, a human invention that deserves to be rethought? A lot of organizations around the world are rethinking the work week right now. You've seen the trials by the Icelandic government, by Microsoft Japan. There's a New Zealand insurance company that's been doing.
Wow. Oh, Icelandic government, New Zealand company can trust New Zealand. Um, this is big stuff happening. Microsoft Japan doing something that the World Economic Forum approves of. What Microsoft? You mean Bill Gates Microsoft doing something that the World Economic Forum agrees with? My God.
Doing it for years, and the data are really encouraging so far. It's still early, but for the most part, performance has either gone up or stayed the same, and people end up having more time to live their lives. And if there is a silver lining of COVID, it has to be that we rethink our priorities, right? That we may decide we don't want our jobs to be the center of our lives, and we want to plan work around life as opposed.
This is a reoccurring theme throughout this meeting. Oh, a benefit of COVID, a benefit of COVID, a benefit for their agenda, a benefit to push their agenda. So let me get this straight. an agenda pushed by Microsoft elsewhere, and the Bill Gates aligned World Economic Forum is saying that, oh, COVID had this massive benefit that it allows us to redesign your lives. So when people say, was COVID enacted on purpose so that they could put things forward like this? Well, this is the evidence of what happened. This is the result of what happened. The same people who spread the ideas around during COVID kept the narrative a certain way, are out there reorganizing our lives as a benefit of COVID. That's a benefit. We got to see our lives.
To vice versa, which too many of us, particularly in the West, have done for too long. So the purpose of the panel today is to talk about, is the 4-day week actually viable? If so, what should it look like? And how do we make it happen? Because I have met some people in Davos who do not think we should even work as few as 6 days. So I think we have some minds to change.
They're saying that people in Davos want people to work 6 days. Look, we're evil. That's funny, isn't it? It's funny because it's us. Because we're the evil ones. Isn't that funny? Because it's true. Because you go outside there, the majority of people would want you to work until you bleed, till you put your children in the pits mining for cobalt and zinc. That's what they want. They want you to be in pain at the same time that you're working for them, and you're not getting paid enough, and you're not being given enough in return for your hard work. That's what they want. That's what they want. Laugh, ha ha ha.
Let me start with social entrepreneur Hillary Cottam. Hillary, can you give us some history and
Hillary
walk us through
Cottam,
how did we
social
get to 5 days a
entrepreneur.
week and where should we be going?
Okay, so let me say to start off that the question was necessity or luxury.
I'm not a fan of Hillary Cottam. I'll say this straight out from the off. I've heard her, I've seen her, I know what she's going to say. I am not a fan of this woman, and we're not going to watch this whole thing. I'm going to skip through in a little bit to something that she says.
And I think that this is a complete necessity for environmental reasons, for human well-being, flourishing reasons, and also for economic reasons. And I think what's really interesting is that, you know, when you ask me about history, is that we think time is immutable, but if we look at the history of work, it changes. So we used to live by prayer time, some societies still do. Then we moved to agrarian time. A lot of us in the West still have school timetables that are stuck on that old-fashioned agrarian time, which is really problematic. Then we moved to industrial time, which you've referenced, which was really complicated. I mean, the reason that we have...
It's problematic to still go by agrarian time in the West because it means kids get 6 weeks holiday plus to relax and like let themselves be kids, and that's problematic for people within the workforce, for business and for organization. When she talks about the stuff, what she does is very largely says about business, you know, economy. That's what really is the impact. That's what they're looking at. That's what they care about. That's what Hillary Cottam is doing her work for. This is what Adam Fake Smile does his work for.
You know, in Western Europe and maybe in the US, kind of big clocks in our town squares is because the biggest problem industrial leaders had was getting people to work on time, because working to a clock was such a kind of alien idea. And now, of course, we've internalized the clock. But when industrial time started, people thought that there would be radical experiments. And one of the most interesting is Kellogg's in the 1930s. And what happened in the 1930s in Kellogg's is that Kellogg's, it was one of the biggest factories, the breakfast cereal. He offered his workers 6-hour shifts from 8 hours for exactly the same pay. And what happened was that people flocked to Kellogg's. Journalists, the administrators of the Hoover, the Hoover administrators, social scientists, there are amazing household studies of what happened, because
people from the Hoover administration, these people, they all flocked to Kellogg's. Kellogg was a bastard. He was a bastard, a right bastard. And again, if you think this was like, oh, I'm offering you this because I'm a kind boss, that's not so. Not every position was that. What she's talking about is a very limited number, that most of the people working in the factories would still have had to work really long hours to be able to afford to live, because if you don't work enough hours back then, you don't get enough money to be able to live, and people had to live, and it was hard times. It was the industrial era. It was like These people's ideas of what the past looked like are completely and utterly, they remove everything hard from history, everything that looks horrible from history, and they make their business leaders in history, people like Kellogg's and other people and people like they mentioned earlier, they make them the heroes. With the real heroes were the people who were working on the shop floor, who were being poisoned with all sorts of chemicals before those chemicals were recognized as being bad for them. The people on the shop floor who were working 12-hour shifts and still now to this day, people are still doing that. Exactly the same thing, and we think we're different. And these people will give you the idea that things have changed. They're exactly the same. They will be exactly the same in the future. You still will go, okay, they've taken large parts of our infrastructure away, so we have nothing fun to do. I may as well just work. And that's what they want. They want you working all the time. Problematic. Every time they say problematic, it means that they can't get people to work when they want them to work.
Everybody thought industrialization would lead to less work. Of course, you know, Keynes was writing about how his grandchildren would have 15-hour days. And so what's really interesting is that at Kellogg's, productivity went up dramatically, accidents went down, you know, the economics of the company really changed, and people's lives improved. And when the kind of household studies people went, people said that they had, quote, more life. That what was amazing was that they could fit in, taking care of people, they had time to make things, they made their own culture, they ran their own sports team.
Okay, so think about this. People who weren't treated as a slave were said, oh, it was a benefit. I had more life. Hail Kellogg! Hail Kellogg! This is what this is. This is where we are, and this is how we are in our mindset. That, oh, we look at the past, there was a benefit. So those people are heroes, and people didn't know anything beforehand and didn't know what was going on, but they knew they were slaves. They knew what was going on beforehand. Don't be bloody naive. They knew exactly what they were being treated like. And there was revolution happening all over the place. In my own place in South Wales through the 1800s, there was plenty of uprisings all around the place, including the Rebecca riots and others. There was people being shot in the street to put down the dissenters who were saying, we don't want to work 7 or 6 day weeks, you evil people who have forced this upon us for years and who will fire us in no time whatsoever, who give us no benefits, no anything like this. And it was workers' rights movement that pushed that, not the business. It was not Kellogg's who suddenly went, I have seen that people need this. And then people went, the stupid masses went, oh yes, Mr. Kellogg's, thank you for giving us things that were very, it seemed obvious and why we could understand it beforehand. Oh, these people were fighting. These people were fighting every day. You had people like in history, like charterists and stuff in Wales, who fought for their rights, for the rights of the people, and they got shot. They got murdered by these people, by the friends of these people. Their retelling of history is exactly what we see within Orwellian dialectic here, all around us, everywhere in the world. These Davos people, this woman, Hillary Cottam here, rewriting the history of our ancestors who suffered as the people who they suffered under being the heroes. The people that are related to the people in their organization are the heroes. And the people who suffered underneath them, under their hands, they're not worth anything. They didn't know anything. They were just like, they needed Kellogg. They needed other people to tell them, no, you need to work 1 day less. That's what you need to do. That's what we'll do. Instead of shooting you when you complain, we'll do that.
You know, things fitted into their lives. And, you know, what we know now is that, in fact, that wasn't the kind of experiment that stuck. We probably don't have, it's very interesting why not, which we probably don't have time for. But, you know, even before the pandemic, the ILO and WHO said that work was killing us. And for the last 2 years, I've been running workshops with workers in kind of post-industrial places. And what they ask for is not a 4-day week. What they ask for is a rethinking of the linear life with less work. So I think it's a necessity, but it doesn't go far enough. Because 4 days is a kind of, may I say, a male solution to this problem. Because basically, it doesn't think about care. Because as we all know, care of our children or our parents or just being with friends doesn't happen in 4 days. It happens around the day.
All male thinking, male thinking. That's why you've got to stock the World Economic Forum and all your businesses up with these women who have been trained by men anyway, inside that same frame of mind, who sell these things in a much kinder way. And this is very like significant to a lot of the things that have happened in the modern era, including, for instance, the war in Iraq. You saw the Luntz-Wexner analysis. I think it was written in 2002, which basically analyzed how people and propaganda worked in at that era and how to push America into war with Iraq. And in the actual policy study, what you discover is that it was women. They got to use women all the time. There's no point in having men. Men and women will accept everything a woman says, so just make women say it all of the time. She is standing up on stage. She is bowing down to the masters of the people who killed her ancestors. But I bet you, if you follow her ancestral line, you won't find them working in Kellogg's factory. No, you will find them up above, looking down on everybody.
So what we actually need to do is rethink the boundaries of time between work and care, between learning. Rethinking the linear life, of course, doesn't mean just the work-study kind of in blocks. And maybe we need some new boundaries so that we do have time to play and to be and so on. So a 4-day working week, a necessity, a start, but I think not the picture.
I think we could get on board with that. I do want to just to be really clear now, how many days you
So this is a whole, like, these guys are loving it because they get to sell something really easy. But this is a whole psychological operation. They got an organizational psychologist up in front of this to pull a psychological operation. This is an operation that they do over and over again. We're the good guys. Everybody in our past is the good guys. The people we're related to were the good guys of the past. We rewrite history. We rewrite facts. We tell you what to believe. And look how good it is. Because we've got something really easy to sell here, haven't we? 5 days down to 4 days. Why would anybody want to argue? Why would anybody want to argue?
think we should be working total, though? Are you advocating for a 2-day week, a 1-day week? Like, how much work do you think is ideal?
Whoa, that's a really difficult question. But I think a starting point would be that we work the equivalent of 4 days over 7. So we're not talking about adding more hours. We're talking about having more time to be. And I mean, one of the things that we should talk about is the climate agenda, because there is very good research that shows that if we work less, we don't travel so much, and we make less intensive consumer choices, you know, because
Autumn loves to cross over these boundaries. She loves to cross over these boundaries. She loves to go over to the other side and say, environmentalism. You know, we should work less because we'll consume less. But when people are off and they have free time, they're more likely to jump into a car, go somewhere else, pollute, maybe. That's not necessarily true. People don't just stop working and then become sedate. That's not how it works. And if we want to talk about environmental stuff, the real impact on the environmental impact in the world will be the mining of rare compounds for use within future technology. So these guys are all about putting that technology forward, getting that mining happening, and at the same time telling you you're destroying the earth. Remember this. Remember who these people are.
we're not time poor. And we all know that wealthy people are those who are using, you know, more carbon, and so then we're not using so much more carbon. But I don't know, maybe, I mean, people want to work at different amounts. It doesn't need to, what we need to is regulate a floor, and then some people love their work and they might want to do more. But for most people in the world, work is pretty backbreaking, and so we need to think about that starting point.
Excellent. So I'm going to go down the line for the first round of questions, and then we'll mix it up. Jonas Priesing, you run Manpower Group. You've been piloting a lot of different ways
Jonas.
to, if not shorten the work week, at least give people a little more flexible opportunities. Tell us about that.
Yes, no, you're right, Graham and Adam. And you know, what's really nice about a session like this is I get to be playing the role of an enlightened, forward-looking leader. Now, since we're in a closed session like this, we can all be clear that I've been carried into this, kicking and streaming by all my colleagues, led by Michelle, our head of people and culture, who's been talking about implementing a work my way strategy, which is...
Now, here we go. Let's rephrase this. So, work my way. It's working your way. What way is that? Oh, it's a 4-day week. Oh, brilliant. Okay. And why am I doing a 4-day week? Oh, it's about you not working as much. Oh, it's about me not working as much. It's not about the technology taking over all around us and you implementing it and it taking my jobs. They're taking out. Is it not anything to do with that? No. Jonas, no, I am Jonas. I'm not going to tell you. I do friendly things like bring you in and tell you you're going to have to work 1 day less and we're all meeting and we force you in. We're friendly, nice Jonas.
Really responding to the desires of workers and our employees, which is to have more time for their life. And, I think that's been a really good evolution. I would say unusual at first, but I think we can see that this is what our employees are looking for. More control, more choice. I'd have to say, though, that the 4-day work week discussion, I see it as part of the desire so clearly expressed during the pandemic and will be one of the lasting legacies of the pandemic, that workers in general desire more flexibility so they have more choice.
So, workers desiring more flexibility so they have more choice is just a direct consequence of the pandemic. There's no people would have wanted that beforehand. That's idiotic. Don't be stupid. If you think that people wanted more flexibility and extra time off before the pandemic, you're an idiot. The pandemic was the best thing ever. It came in and helped us reprioritize and decide, have some form of great reset.
We think this is one of the lasting legacies of the pandemic. I would say, though, that as soon as knowledge workers are involved, we talk about these revolutions in the workplace, 4-day work week or, flexibility. There are many professions, nurses, airline crews, doctors, truck drivers, that are already working in compressed work schedules, producing the output that is requested, but in different regimented schedules that are not traditional 5-day, 40-hour work weeks. And I should add,
No, but because those, when you say traditional, you're just taking the thing that you've been making most people work for a long time, and you're putting in. So most of the jobs that I ended up working past probably about 2005 had 4 days on, 3 days off, or 4 days on, 4 days off. You'd some of the in care, you often work and in police as well. I think they're called continental shifts. You do 4 days on, 4 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, stuff like this, and you rebalance your life. There's loads of jobs. They're trying to define the what they're doing here, and I've talked about this a lot, and it's again a dialectic. It's the Hegelian dialectic again, always being used. Oh, the enemy of the freedom is this 5-day week, so we are the champions against this fighting against this 5-day week, and yet they want you to work 6 days. Really, they don't need you to do that now because they've got all this technology. So they want to put you on the scrap heap, and they need to convince you that's a good thing. They need to convince you that walking onto the scrap pile is good for you.
Working from home, where you can now have this notion of remote working and flexibility. 60% of the workforce in most developed countries don't have the luxury of that experience. And actually, they've been working way more during the pandemic because we needed them as essential workers to keep the economy going. So on the one
So the pandemic, the consequence of the pandemic meant that people went online and worked digitally. Oh, we started entering into a new world. No, people had to actually work more. They had to work all of the time because we needed them. Oh, and when you implement new things in the future, will you need them again? No, we won't need people to implement the other things in the future. Eventually, to be honest, we won't need people at all. We can let them all die because, it suits our agenda.
On the one hand, I'm delighted with the discussion. I'm absolutely in favor. We have a great scheme at Manpower Group that we're now working towards, and I think that's the way we're going to be doing business going forward, giving people different choices, trusting their judgment. It's not necessarily an individual choice, though, because being in a company is a team sport. So teams will have to decide how best to engage and when to be together, when not, for what purpose. No point in coming in the office to have a Zoom call, but you want to have time to collaborate. But at the same time, I would argue, this needs to be equitably distributed across many categories of workers, not only knowledge workers, not only those.
Okay, so equitable distribution amongst workers. Right, please analyze that language and tell me which leader of the past or leaders in which country under which ideology do you think would say such sentences? Does it sound a little bit communistic? I think it does. Because this is what they try and do. They incorporate this idea of equity and equality within an area of and a spectrum of people where there's no such thing and there's no ability to create. So instead of you're paying the people at the top masses and the people at the bottom pittance. And to make it seem equal, you give everybody a bit of time off. There we go. We're all equal now. We've all work 4 days a week now. Well, in actually, the boss now work 3 days a week. But let's not talk about that because that's what the next stage will be, won't it? That's what the next stages will be. It top down, trickle down economics.
That can work from home, but people who are in production lines, who are driving trucks, who are in warehouses, who are in manufacturing, otherwise we'll have a bifurcation of the workforce. And an unequitable distribution of this very valuable benefit, and that is truly something that all workers are looking for.
I want to reinforce something that you just said, which is we've had a lot of debates about remote and hybrid work over the last couple of years. But if you look at the data, there was a Wall Street Journal survey earlier this year showing that the flexibility people want most at work is not choices about where they work. It's choices about when and how much they work.
Yeah.
Right? More than a chance to work from home or anywhere, people want flexible hours.
I just want to reinforce the organizational psychologist on the panel just wants to reinforce something. Now, where is he reinforcing that thing? But it's true. It's true. People want flexibility. I want flexibility. You want flexibility. These people offering you flexibility just before revolution is a reason. It's not because they're being kind. It's not because they're seeing productivity. It's not for all the things that they are saying. It's because slowly they have to give up some of that power, and they're only doing it because technology is going to be taken over, and they want robo-slaves to do their bidding because they don't say no. You can program a robo-slave to say, yes, I will kill the Jews. Thank you very much. Whoever just programmed that in has got the robo-slaves to kill all the Jews. So well done. You get round full circle. You have a guy like Schwab, whose father worked directly for the Nazis and their atomic bomb program, and you think that's going to manifest differently in the future? I don't think so. It'll be tasked to robo-slaves who will have no conscience, no ethics, and whoever, that very small group at the top who inputs their code, will decide whether or not a certain small class of people, whether it be blacks, whether it be whites, whether it be rich, whether it be poor, whether it be Jews, Christians, atheists, it don't matter. It don't matter. Robo-slave will take care of that for you.
Which I think is what we're here to discuss.
Right.
So Anne-Marie Slaughter, you have been at New America, at Princeton, at the State Department in the US. You've had a lot of policy roles. Can you help us look at
Did you see that woman?
this from a macro perspective? Because it's easy for me as a
Let's
psychologist
get back
to say,
to that
yes,
face.
from a micro standpoint, I will get...
This is American Policy Institute face. That's what she's got. You know how some people have like smug face and some people have cum face because they work in porn? Well, this person, they have Policy Institute face. This is like even her hair is designed to look presentable to the people that she's trying to talk to, and her open suit, this she's wearing some sort of power jacket. This is floppy. Oh, she's so normal and down to earth. Bet you she has got some hereditary nonsense. You go back in history, you'll discover that she's from a family of bigwigs somewhere. But let's hear what she has to say, because I'm pretty positive that here at the World Economic Forum, I won't enjoy what she has to say.
Better work out of people in 6 focused hours than 8 unfocused hours. But how would this change society? How does the world look different if we go with 4 days a week?
So let me start by saying I think of it as 32 hours distributed as necessary. And I actually think there's lots of experimentation. I know there are places that do 2 8-hour days and then some 4-hour days that obviously you can do 5 6-hour days or 1 day off. So just putting that out there. And then to the...
So I still know some places who do this and do that and do the other, and then still do 5-hour and still do 6-hour days, like we were talking about was a thing of the industrial era of Henry Ford. Yes, I know loads of people who have to work 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I'm not sure when I last had a break, because to fight the New World Order, you don't get days off, because they have all of these slaves working 5 to 6 days and pretending that they're going to give them 4 days, when in actual fact those people are just going to have to get second jobs because they can't afford to live, because everything's got so expensive and the cost of living is going up because of their mismanagement and their bad policy being incorporated on a national level, internationally, to have this creaking, sneaking, nasty, like a vine wrapping around everything, globalism, suffocating humanity.
The larger question, and it builds on Jürgen's point that Jonas's point that different categories of workers
Jürgen,
have very
that was
different
racist.
needs. So when I first started writing about flexible work, what I heard from were lots of people who were working minimum wage and didn't have defined hours. They were working on just-in-time scheduling with time software that meant they often didn't have enough work. So the first thing I want to say from a societal point of view is this: yes, for knowledge workers, fine. For many other workers, this is a nightmare. That what they want is predictability. They need to know when they're going to have childcare. They need to know they're going to have enough hours to actually make it. And unless we address that, this simply increases the inequity that we already see so dramatically, much, much, much further. So start with that. Whatever we do, we have to also recognize that we've got to make sure that everyone is able to work enough hours to have a living wage. Beyond that, though, I think there's a revolution here in agency, and that is good for society. And I'll use...
There's a bloody revolution in 3-letter agencies, if you ask me. And would you think that the World Economic Forum is just another 3-letter agency, really? Because it was set up via CIA jiggery pokery, wasn't it? So it's just another extension. So agency might be the right term to use. Love.
Use the example of an academic. As a professor at Princeton, I had to be in the classroom, you will know this,
well, that explains
maximum
something.
5 hours a week. Now, for each of those hours, I had a lot of preparation, but that was on my own time. I also had to show up at a faculty meeting, and I had office hours. The total, not more than 8 hours. It was up to me how I worked to get that done. I also had to produce research. It was up to me.
Yeah, people like you and your class and your ilk get the choice, while the other people who work under you don't get any choice, and the janitor on the university floor has to work 6-day weeks still. It's still the same system, masked in a different way, with people who are getting the benefits telling you that, oh, look, I've had all of the benefits. Now I can have more benefits.
Most academics work really hard, but we work on our own time. Right? If we need, certainly if you need to be somewhere for your children, or if you simply want to work out every morning, whatever it might be, the focus there is much more on task than on time. And that to me is the larger social revolution, and it's the management revolution. It is so much easier to manage according to presence rather than performance. You were there 12 hours, you were there 14 hours, you had your jacket hanging over your chair and I saw your light burning. you have no idea if you actually got your work done. So, but thinking about tasks means we really
God, they really enjoyed that, didn't they? There was some really like awkward ha 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 ha, ha laughing ha 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 ha. Yes.
have to prioritize what needs to get done and what, like half of my inbox, maybe 2/3 of my inbox, should actually be burned, right? It is not productive work. It gives the
Well, when she's talking about the half her inbox getting burnt, it's probably in a Hillary Clinton on being held on private servers type of a deal, because this woman talks, walks, and acts like a representative of a three-letter agency. I call jiggery pokery on her. I bet you if you look into her, you'd find some interesting links. But she's got another agenda in mind, and that's what she's putting across. I mean, you have to put into like contrast. Her name is Slaughter. Her name is Slaughter. Slaughter. Now, I don't know if you know what that means.
illusion of productivity, but it's not. Productivity is me sending things out where I've decided this is really important work, or doing the work that takes more time. So I do think it would be far better for society, again, thinking about all of society. I think it would give us time to be whole human beings. Hillary and I have written a lot about what we call sapiens integra. So there's Homo economicus, this mythical, human being that is rational all the time and driven by a set of utilities. And then there's whole human beings who also have care and connection and other good things. I think it would be good for all of
You see how she said that there's one who, have all of these work. They have to do work. They have to do work. And there's the other, they have all the care and stuff, that crap that we don't want to think about, really. Even though we do it ourselves, we don't really want to think about it. There's awkwardness. And I wonder how these two women have worked together and what they work on behind the scene. Cottam seems really, really suspicious.
society. But I also think this increase in agency of here's what we need done. Now you figure out how best to do it.
This reminds me of one of our deans who complained that I didn't go to enough faculty meetings and I needed to put in more FaceTime. And so I FaceTimed him. I also would really like to know the physics of how to burn email, but that is for another day.
I know. I was sort of having this nice image of it just like self-destructing. Yeah, like
Yes.
in Mission Impossible.
Yeah, which like in Mission Impossible, and why would your email you'd be thinking and projecting that out, unless of course maybe there's a reason that you probably have a little bit of three-letter agency and everything's very funny, and it seems like there's a little bit of like they've discussed jokes that they're going to say, because I think some of this is so awkward. It feels so awkward. The next woman who's going to speak is also going to feel, because she's going to be awkward in a way that's like, oh, I'm happy and joyous and everything's really good.
It really captures the rage that
Yes,
you
it
feel
does.
about all these intrusions into your life. Ahud al-Rumi, as a minister, you have embarked on one of the bolder tests of a shorter work week. Can you tell us about, I think it's 4.5 days.
Some opted for 4.5, some opted for 4. But
So wait a minute. I don't know where she is. I would suppose it might be UAE, Qatar, or Saudi Arabia. One of those countries. I mean, they really love boosting up Saudi Arabia, but they went down to 4.5 days. Oh yeah, some opted for 4 days. Most opted for 4.5 days. We don't want to give them 4 days. That's silly, because we're not like you. We don't have to worry about revolution. Our guys are like really under our thumb. Your guys, they're the ones you got to worry. You might have to go down to 3.5 days, or they're gonna chop your head off.
before I start, Adam, if you allow me, this concept of the shorter work week, I kept my eye on it for many years, given my previous role as Minister of Wellbeing in my government.
Concert. I don't know if that's the right thing. I don't get what she means. This concert. Do you mean like this show, this endeavor, this ever-changing circus? This what do you mean?
And I saw there were many trials around the world since 2008, but something shifted in the past 2 years. I think, as Jonas said, this may be part of the impact of COVID and the pandemic, where people went through a roller coaster of change. They worked from home. The line between the personal and professional life blurred. And then when they started going back to the organizations or reboarding in the organization, there was a tension. There was more demand for flexibility, well-being, discussion about mental health, and also more demand or the tension between the remote and the physical work. I see more of the implementation around the world in the private sector rather than the governments. And I can understand that because governments usually are slow. They have rigid systems. In the UAE, I think we are creating the government of the future. We always push boundaries and we're not afraid of experimenting with new things.
Okay, there's a couple of things I want to say about our roomie here just before we go on. She's not really looking at the crowd. If you notice, I'm not sure if she's got notes down below. And I notes when you're dealing with these sort of topics, you've got certain things to make. So of course, everybody can have notes. You can't. It's not cheating to have some notes to make sure you get things right. It's just getting things right, isn't it? So I don't care if she's got some notes, but she's looking down. She's looking away. She's not looking at the crowd. She keeps looking at Adam. Her body language is kind of closed up because I don't think she knows the subject as well as she's trying to act like she knows the subject. And this is the disconnect of someone when they're describing to people. They can't look at people because they don't feel confident. They don't feel confident because they've had to research this over the past couple of weeks to do a presentation in front of some people who are obviously part of three-letter agencies on behalf of your very small kingdom that is trying to impress. So her speech isn't aimed at people. It ain't us. If you listen to what she's saying about private government, all of these different things, all of these things are known facts. They know these are things that are true. She is just basically pulling off an A-level, not degree level, small synopsis of the situation that everybody is aware of and saying the keywords. We are building the government of the future. We are building the government of the future. That sort of, this is what we are doing. We are UAE. This is our advertising. This is our marketing. We're marketing to you. We're not even talking to the people because we don't care. We'll give them 4.5-day week because we got to get on with your agenda. And 4.5-day week is easier to say to you, oh, we done 4.5-day week than saying 5-day week. And we're not going to do 4.5-day week because we can't do 4.5-day week. So this is not true. I feel that she's closed up. I feel her body language is closed up. I feel that she's not talking to people. I feel she's talking to the companies inside, the representatives and representatives of three-letter agencies, and she's hitting markers and keywords. This is not an honest speech. Sorry, Arumi.
And maybe we are the first country in the world to institute the shorter work week government-wide.
We're so good.
And employees are given the flexibility to work remotely or manage their working hours on flexi times. This decision was triggered by 4 reasons. First, enhancing the well-being. Second, strengthening the family bonds and the community relations because people will have more time to take care of their families, whether men or women. And they will have more time for recreational activities. The third one is economic because when people have a longer weekend, they can spend more, and this will benefit the local domestic sectors.
This is all basics of 4-day. This is like if you went to someone is a tick sheet. There was pros and cons after 25 years of analyzing carefully the 4-day working week. Actually, probably 150 years of analyzing the potential of a 4-day working week. And this is what we get. We come to this. We get this woman listing out the conclusions that have been found out by other people, to people who already know those that tick sheet, that checklist. They already know what's on there. So she's nothing new to her. She's not talking to the audience. So she's trying to show the people in the room who she sees as equals, not the ones who are watching, or the audience at home. She's trying to show them she knows what she's talking about, and all she's doing is looking like a student compared to them, because it's not really about that to them. None of them are here to really argue for the 4-day working week. They're here to do a psychological operation, and she's there like, I'm supposed to say stuff and be knowledgeable. They're not knowledgeable. They're saying stuff, but what they want to do is get you to think that they're the good guys when this thing is going to happen anyway, because they're introducing the technology everywhere that's going to take away your jobs, and then you will get angry and you will want to have revolution. If they can manage that anger, there will be no revolution that takes them down. And that is the reoccurring theme throughout history. The same in the Industrial Revolution, what they were talking about earlier. Same.
And also to better align with the global markets. But also, we were supported to move ahead. And I can mention some of the factors that really supported us in this implementation. First, discussion on well-being is advanced in the UAE. We started in 2016 developing a national well-being strategy. That was even before the pandemic. And I had the honor to work on that agenda. Main pillar of that agenda was well-being at workplace. We developed the tools and the guides for that. The second, as Anne-Marie mentioned, we focus on results, not clock in, clock out. Productivity at the heart of what we do. We have systems to measure the performance of it.
Again, this is like it's UAE's advertisement to the other members of the panel and the World Economic Forum to say we. But they're saying I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this. She's just repeating what she wants them to see of their country. Whether they do it or not, we have no idea. And people, majority of people will be like, we don't really care about her anyway.
Entities and individuals. Third, we had the right digital infrastructure, which allowed us to provide services 24/7, regardless of the hours or the working days, which is really essential for governments, because some of the early trials around the world failed because of the complaints from the citizens, because of the disruption in the service delivery. And the fourth thing is that we had agility in our HR system. We were able to move fast, and we were supported by the leadership. And maybe I can share later with you some of the early data that we gathered from this implementation and what we learned from this experience.
We would love to hear about those data now, especially because there's some other governments here in Davos that could benefit from your expertise.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. We started.
She blushed there. So they are reciprocating on her want, her desire to impress them. They're saying, oh, we would love that expertise. Oh, you're so wonderful. But they've already know all of this. This is like low level. This isn't high level talk. This woman is really not really in with this system. She's trying to get in with them. She's trying to impress them.
Started the implementation in January 2022. We planned it very well because, you know, government entities are sensitive to change. So we had to do a lot of coordination to make sure schools, hospitals, government entities,
we know how it works.
They are on board. So some of the early data that we gathered are really promising. 70% of employees reported that they are working more efficiently, prioritizing and managing better their time during the week. Reduction, 55% reduction in absentees, which is wonderful. And 71% of employees reported that they're spending more time with their families. And let me share a funny story with you about this. And how
It's going to be funny.
Because this might benefit also some of the organizations that are thinking of implementation. When I went to office on Monday morning after the first long weekend, I was so excited and happy to ask my colleagues, how was their weekend? And I was shocked. Some of them were lost. Some of them were angry. Say, we don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? We don't know what to do with the extra time that we have at hand.
Now, even though I'm quite dismissive of all of these people, I think she's being very honest here. And I don't think it was a large group of people who they tried this on. But I, too, am aware that I talked with Lindsay Sharman the other day. And Lindsay Sharman was saying that she was teaching in school, and they did this project where the kids could decide to do whatever they wanted to do. They decided how the project worked for that term, semester, however long it was. And there would be 4 parts to it. And the only thing is at the end of it, they'd have to do a presentation of each of the 4 parts. And the majority of the kids got on with it really well. I think she said about 30%. 70% got on with it really well. They really it took a little bit of time to adapt to that freedom. They could do anything in the class, but they would still have consequences, and they start to learn and understand. But she said about 30% didn't know what to do. Just please tell us, please tell us what to do. Please, I can't handle this. Some people need to be told what to do. Those 30% then are the 30% who are actively voting, the 30% who are actively taking part in society, so that they get told what to do. And we see that, and they rule the roost. The system is made for the people who can be told what to do.
So they needed some time to adjust to the extra time that they had. And now they're spending more time with their families. And also 95% of students reported that they enrolled in more extracurricular activities during the longer weekend to support their talent or hobbies. So the results are promising, but we are still monitoring the implementation to make sure that objectives are met and that we can adjust the policy as we go forward.
It reminds me a little bit of something that happened in Brazil not long ago at SEMCO, where there was an observation that people, by the time they get to retirement age, are often not mentally or physically able to take full advantage of it. Yeah. And so they started a Retire a Little program where you could buy back a day of your week. And they expected that it was going to be people in their 50s doing it, most popular among people in their 20s and 30s. So I think there's something here. So we have heard, I think, a very strong case for the well-being, family.
I have to say, did you see the relief on her face then? Go back a little bit. The relief on her face that she got that presentation over with, and she did well for the UAE, in her own opinion. I mean, as far as she knows, she's in a bubble. She believes this is important. That's what her task was to do, impress these guys at the World Economic Forum. She got through it. She said all of the bits, but none of it was things that they care about, because the subject itself, they don't care about. This is a task. It's a PR task. It's a psychological operation to convince you that they're the ones who are giving you this, that they're the good guys, because they need to keep convincing you of this idea that they're the good guys and everybody else is the bad guys, because they're projecting.
There's something here. So we have heard, I think, a very strong case for the well-being, family, climate, economic benefits of shortening the work week. I'd just love to get a sense of the room and the panel. So let's start with one question, which is, can you just hold up the number of days per week that you...
Can you please put your hand up if you've got a soul? And if so, which of the gods do you worship?
currently work? Let's ask the panel to do that, and also those of you who are physically in the room with us. Hold up however many days you work currently.
You worship the god of six.
I'm seeing a lot of
she's not putting up
out there.
Yeah.
2 hands would be the clue. And then how many days ideally would you be working moving forward?
I think there's a middle finger that should go up here.
What you want.
Yeah, what I want.
God, what I want.
Yeah, of course it can be flexible. You can go like this.
I can have so much time off if we just destroyed Russia.
Jazz hands.
All right, so I think the majority, both of the panel and of the room.
Okay, well, she's just done jazz hands, and she's going to say some stuff now, and we're going to listen to Miss Jazz Hands over there. I don't think you want to be doing jazz hands. I think she felt that. Let's just go back a tiny bit and see her feeling a bit sad about doing jazz hands. There you go.
4 to 5.
Yeah, of course it can be flexible. You can go like this, if that helps you.
Jazz
Here we go.
hands.
All right,
Oh,
so
I
I think
shouldn't
the
do that.
majority, both of the panel and of the room, is working a lot and wants to be working less, even
Jazz
if they love their work.
hands. One hand
So what are
twisted
the obstacles
jazz
to
hands.
moving toward that world, and how do we overcome the resistance? I'm going to open this up. Whoever has thoughts, where do we go next?
Where do we go? Go on, Cottam. Over
And
to
I will
you.
cold call if I have to, but I know you all have thoughts.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that what
Somebody
Abud said is really interesting, that we do have to kind of relearn how to use disposable time. And we did see this in the pandemic. We saw people, beginning to take up knitting or baking, and we began to kind of use our leisure time in different ways.
Pandemic. We saw this in the pandemic. A benefit of what we saw in the pandemic. We saw this about people would take it up baking and knitting. Oh, they were also being injected with stuff and falling over and dying. But let's not talk about that. At least they were taking up a hobby.
But I also wanted to come back to a point that both of you made, which is that I read this analysis recently that actually Keynes was right, that over our lifetime we do work 15-hour weeks. It's just that, as you said, we have it all at the end of our lives. And one of the most interesting experiments that I've seen is in Scotland, where in the state is, and it's interesting that the state can be a mover of these examples, is asking people with very difficult work, like you're a grave digger or a rubbish collector. So in the state, you can only apply for those jobs when you're young. And then when you're a bit older, you do kind of slightly easier work. And then at the end, you become kind of a community worker, a janitor that's kind of... So you can also sort of spread the load in that way, which I think is really, really interesting.
It'd be amazing if work and
Wow. Okay. Some of what she said then, right?
One of the most interesting experiments that I've seen is in Scotland, where in the state is, and it's interesting that the state...
Where the state grew a little moustache just under its nose and started going, get into the can't dig out. That's what the state in Scotland started to do. The experiment in Scotland is the most interesting that I've seen, where the Scottish female Hitler has been in charge.
Can be a mover of these examples, is asking people with very difficult work, like you're a grave digger or a rubbish collector. So in the state, you can only apply for those jobs when you're young. And then when...
So the state says you can only apply for those jobs when you're young. When you're older, you have to do different jobs.
When you're a bit older, you do kind of slightly easier work, and then at the end, you become kind of a community worker, a janitor that's kind of... So you can...
And you become a community by the end. So in the middle, you do slightly easier work, and then by the end, when you're in your middle age, you become a janitor or community worker. Yeah. Oh, but you will be sweeping the floor and shutting the fuck up. Oh, wait, 1 moment. We've got machines to do that now. Get onto the pile. It's time to get onto the pile. You're going to go the old way. It's the only way.
Also sort of spread the load in that way, which I think is really, really
Spread the load.
interesting.
it'd be amazing if work and family didn't peak at the same time in our lives.
Right, peaking and spreading loads. I mean, this is just getting sexy at the annual meeting now.
Well, exactly, but we are our own worst enemies, aren't we? I mean, I think that's the...
You are.
Or at least here in Davos we are, like not necessarily everybody. Let's
But isn't the source of the happiness and the delight with the ability to work in new and different ways, the ability to choose how you want to work that works with your life? And different people have different circumstances. So for some people, getting the extra day, the formal extra day, you only work 4 days as opposed to 5, may give them a lot of disposable time that they can do other stuff in, and they'll be delighted with that. Whereas other people may say, you know what, dropping off kids at bus and picking up kids at bus, priority number 1. If I can work my way around that and I fix that, I'm delighted. And I'll be happy to work, on a Saturday to catch up on stuff I didn't have time to do before. Because, I saw some interesting research recently in the US, as you know, we don't have a lot of vacation. But there are some companies, as part of their new employee offering, say unlimited vacation is the benefit, expecting people to be delighted.
They don't take it.
And you know what the outcome is when you give unlimited vacation in organizations that treasure a lot of work? People take less vacation. Because the cultural environment is, you know, it's not seen as rewarding and or being rewarded.
Not seen or not see? Which one? I tell you, it's something about it where it's like, oh, it's rewarding. You find when you get given more, it's more rewarding to stay in the office and do your work. Do your work.
So I think it's the notion of choice that gives the benefit and the delight. At least when I think about this from my perspective, you know, that I enjoy working, you know, when I can and when I'm interested in different topics, but it can happen, you know, all the time at different times, and I have time to do other things as well.
I feel the same way, and I feel like I should disclose I work part of a 6th day because nobody else is working then. And I want everyone else to go to 4 so that the 5th day will be like that.
He works the 6th day where they do intelligence operation meetings, probably.
Henry?
So I will say at New America, you get 6 weeks paid time off.
In New America, you get 6 weeks paid time off.
So that includes everything.
Includes everything.
And you can only roll over 2 of those weeks. So if
You can only roll over 2 of those weeks.
you don't take 4 weeks, you're just leaving money on the table. You will not cash it out when you leave.
You will burn, and your CBDCs will be the same.
That's how strongly I believe that fundamentally, I put this on my out of office in August, that I can do 12 months of work in 11 months, but not in 12 months. You give me that 1 month off, and really off. I mean, yes, I read.
A load of people are like, yeah. Well, let's think about it on the bigger scale. That's what we like to do at Davos, the grander scale, the bird's eye view. Yeah, instead of thinking about 6-day weeks, think about it like 11-month years. That's what we need. Well, actually, let's just stop projecting out our fear of Robespierre, putting in an extra month, and chopping off all of it.
I do the kind of thing that I never have time to do, but I don't do email, I don't do your sort of standard stuff. And that recharges you. I mean, again, you need that for your productivity, your creativity, all of that. So I actually think even in the United States, we desperately need to change that. But
Right.
this question about it does come down also to
That
what we
crushing their hands
value
together like Cruella
in-
de Vil. What do we
in how
value?
people spend their time. So in the Atlantic article I wrote a decade ago, I pointed out that if you had a man in your office who got up at 4 to train for a marathon,
I'd be
and
like,
then
get out of my
came into the
office!
and worked a regular day, he would just be, wow, you know, look at that discipline. That's really something. Very much impressed. The woman who does that, and I know many, who gets up at 4 to make sure the lunches are packed, all the stuff is organized, getting her kids ready, and then comes in, is actually regarded as less than if she's spending time on care. So the question is, and you could think of lots of other hobbies in the same way. What do we value? The United States really thinks that how hard you work is the measure of your moral worth.
Virtue,
And
virtue.
in
There's a
fact,
lot of
I
virtue
would
attached to
argue
what
that
she's saying.
Caring for your family is, and
Here
of
we
course,
go.
work supports a
Virtue.
family. We're all
Yeah,
we're
and
all
at the
aware
same
of
time,
that.
you're destroying
But
families
the time you
abroad.
spend on emotional caregiving is just as, really, if anything, it's more a measure of moral worth, but at the very least, it's equal. So if we're going to think about
Moral worth. I'd give her emotional care. I'd put in her emotional care home. That's where I'd put her in.
time off, we have to not undercut it by thinking only some things or sneaking that work on the weekend is what really defines about, you know, a human being we admire, as opposed to a really well-rounded human being, a human being who has many hobbies or really spends that time on community or family care.
Wow, being a hard worker does not make you a good person.
Being a hard worker does not make you a good person. Okay.
You heard it in Davos.
I work
think
hard
it's-
and I expect people to work hard, but that doesn't mean working all the time. Far from it.
All right, I'm looking at time.
Actually, it's not far from it. Because 4 isn't that far away from 5, is it? A 4-day week isn't that far away from 5. An 11-month year isn't that far away from a 12-month year.
We have time for lots of audience questions. So let's begin. We have a hand. I just want to remind everyone that questions do end with a question mark.
Right. Well, I'm going to leave the audience question mark. That was to get a gist of what they were talking about in the annual meeting on 2020 about this 4-day week stuff and how they virtue signal. This is more about examining how they put forward their agenda and how they try and be the people who create a new history where these big, powerful industrial era giants were really nice people who were ahead of the trend. Henry Ford and Kellogg were both thinking about the people and they weren't thinking about their own profits. That sort of stuff is a lie. Goodbye from NEWSPASTE. Johnny Vedmore. Goodbye.